Hello all. Now let's go on to the second part of the sixth lecture in this EE 614. The last time we were talking about intrinsic semiconductors, the carrier density under different temperatures with various materials, and the concept of doping density. And given the carrier density n, the relationship between n and the Fermi level, we found it that we can write it as e power EF minus EI by KT, K being the Boltzmann constant, T being the temperature, EF is the Fermi level. And we know that the Fermi level lies at the center of the band gap for a intrinsic semiconductor, which we write as EI here. Right? So now that we have a fair feeling for the carrier density, let's talk about the dynamics, because that's what we're interested in. So today we will talk about carrier dynamics. Let us go back to our previous description of dynamics of electrons in metals. We discussed that we can describe the conduction in metals using the Drude's model, and the Drude's model depends upon the classical description of electrons, and then he found that under a particular applied electric field E, you can estimate the velocity of the electrons as E tau by m naught into E, where tau was called as the scattering time constant, m naught was the mass of the electron. It was considered to be free in the Drude's case, and E is the applied electric field. Capital E is the applied electric field, small e is the electronic charge. So this can be typically represented by Greek letter mu, which is called charge mobility, and it has the unit of centimeter square per volt second, or typically represented as centimeter square per volt second in semiconductor device physics. Right? Now that we have this particular relationship, right, the current in metals is NeV, V being the velocity again, which is Ne square tau by m naught into E, and this is the relationship. This is what is conductivity, right? And for a free electron gas, m naught is the mass of the electron, right? With all these things given, now let us go back and introduce the things that we have discussed till now. We say that the electrons are not typically free, but then they reside in a periodic lattice, right? So in such case, we have to transform the mass m naught is transformed to what is called as m effective, right, or me, right? Now you know that in a typical semiconductor, let's say, which we describe in this band structure, right, you have some amount of electrons in the conduction band, some amount of holes in the valence band, right, and conduction can be due to both of them. So your actual I is I due to electron plus I due to holes. So basically it is Ne square tau by mass of the electron plus Pe square tau by mass of the hole, both of them in the applied electric field. Right? Remember that electron moves in the opposite direction. However, the total current is a summation because the current is in the same direction. Right? So now let us take that in a typical semiconductor, we know that the conduction band is a single band, but it is not a spherical as we saw before, and it has an elliptical shape under constant energy with different masses, longitudinal and two transverse masses, right? So what is this effective mass? As we have done in the density of states case, the effective mass in the conduction case is actually written as a geometric mean of 1 longitudinal plus 2 transverse. It is pretty obvious, right? And the same thing for hole is actually light hole plus 1 mass of heavy hole, right? Because we know that the valence band has two, right? The light hole and heavy hole. This has the lesser dispersion, so basically this has a higher mass. This is heavy hole. This has a higher dispersion, so it has a lower mass. It is called as a light hole, right? So with these things given, this is a rude way of handling uh, conduction in semiconductors. However, in practical semiconductors, the mobility is affected by several other parameters. So mobility in practical semiconductors. So mobility is actually, as we saw before, depends directly on the scattering time tau, right? And tau we described in our previous Drude's model as the time between two scatterings, and Drude came up to a conclusion that the electrons get scattered off the atoms, each of them. So basically it was in angstroms, and so basically it means it has to be scattered off scattered off the atomic core. But then we came out of it thinking that with a treatment that the atoms are in a periodic lattice, and hence the electrons actually don't get scattered off the atomic ion cores. So basically it should have infinite velocity, right? Because it will accelerate as much as you have the we saw this, right? So basically the force on every electron is EE, and this should be mass dV by dt. So basically, as long as you have the electric field, your mass should continually accelerate. So, but that is not true. In every practical semiconductor, you still have a constant current and you still have a constant velocity. That's because the mobility is because it gets scattered between several things in a semiconductor. One such thing is called as ionized impurities. This is a consequence of the doping that you do. So people typically we dope a semiconductor to increase the carrier density N, right? However, the dopants, as we saw before, gets ionized, and then let's say it has this positive charge, and an electron which is trying to move in a material gets attracted by this positive charge, leading to a change in the vector direction of the velocity. This is what is basically scattering all about. So you have ionized impurities which scatter or which change the vector of the velocity, and you have what is called as phonons. So phonons are basically quantized excitations of the atomic vibrations. I'm not sure if we will have time to go into the details of the phonon dispersion, but typically you have the acoustic phonons which are low energy, and you have the optical phonons which are high energy phonons. But we say that both of them get scatters the electrons in a semiconductor. So let us deal one by one, and more specifically we see the impact of these contributions on the electronic transport with respect to temperature as well. There are other things which scatter. For instance, you have scattering from grain boundaries, you have scattering from the interfaces, and so on and so forth. But for now we will deal only with these two scatterings. Okay, so let us do ionized impurity scattering. So the actual mobility, which is dominated by the ionized impurity, is expressed as T power 3 by 2 divided by root m star into Ni. While we will not go into the exact derivation of this expression, but we will qualitatively try to understand why the mobility has a temperature dependence. And of course, the inverse relationship with the number of impurities. Here Ni is the number of impurities that we have. Impurity is a dopant, as we saw previously, right? it is inversely proportional to the number of impurities, which is pretty straightforward, right? So the more number of impurities you have, larger will be the scattering and hence lower will be the mobility. So in order to understand this effect of mobility and the role played by the impurities, one has to understand the scattering rate. So the scattering rate is inversely proportional to the time, right? Here we have two numbers, k and k prime. So to understand this, let's assume that we have a semiconductor, okay, and it is doped such that you have certain number of carriers, right? Let's say you have carriers filled till this particular energy, and you have equal number of them moving in positive k and negative k if there is no any applied electric field, right, giving you net zero current. However, if you apply a particular current, then you have the distribution slightly tilted, so you have more number of carriers moving in the positive k and lesser number moving in the negative k, right? So let us say that I take an electron here with a positive k, right? So it has to be scattered in order to conduct, right? So basically it can be scattered in a particular range of k's, and it cannot be scattered in a range in which there already exists an electron, right? Because that's Pauli blocking that we previously saw. So this scattering rate from this particular k to any k, let us say this particular point as k prime, to any wave vector k prime is given by 2 pi ni z e square by v h bar q square plus lambda square epsilon square e k prime minus e k del of. Okay, so while this expression seems complicated, we are trying to just understand this qualitatively, right? The exact derivation comes from Thomas Fermi screening, right? So we will not go into how this can be derived. Well, we can do this if you are interested, so just let me know. But however, to just understand this, these are all constants. You see that the scattering rate depends directly on the number of impurities, which is obvious, right? It also depends directly on Ze square. So Ze square is the Coulombic potential, right? So Z is atomic number of the dopant. So basically, it depends on how much is the Coulombic force for an electron which goes, right? It's proportional to Ze square, and it's inversely proportional to Q square. So actually Q is Ek prime minus Ek, or actually it is K prime H bar Q, right? So basically it is inversely proportional to the separation between the current wave vector K and the scattered wave vector K prime. So all that is trying to say this is the electron wants to be scattered only in a small band of energies which is very close to this current energy, right? So basically, if you take an electron which is going in this direction, the scattering rate is proportional to the number of free electrons in the vicinity of this particular electron, and it is that which varies with temperature, and that you can understand by the Fermi function, right? So I'm going to draw this again. Let's assume that I have a k here, and it wants to get scattered in another k prime, right? And you are talking about the we said that this particular the scattering rate from here to here depends upon the separation. The closer it is the higher the scattering rate. Now for this to be scattered, this k should be occupied and k prime should be vacant, right? Now at 0 Kelvin, you know that the Fermi function is exactly flat. So if we have a k here, the probability of k prime being very close and vacant is much higher at lower temperature than the probability of k prime being close and being unoccupied at higher temperatures, because at higher temperatures you know that the dispersion or the Fermi function is like this, right? So this is t not equal to 0 and this is at t equal to 0. At t not equal to 0, you have some occupation probability very close to k, right? And hence the scattering probability really drops. So this explains why that as t increases, you have lesser and lesser scattering rate, and hence impurity dominant scattering has a lower impact at higher temperatures. Now with that kind of a background on ionized impurity scattering, let us go to phonon impurity scattering. Phonon, it's not an impurity, phonon scattering. The phonon scattering rate mu p is given by 1 by 5 by 2 t power 3 by 2. It is important to note that the mobility for ionized impurity scattering rate goes as t power positive 3 by 2, whereas for phonon scattering rate it goes as t power negative 3 by 2, right? The reason for this is again in the occupational probability of phonons, and we know that phonons are bosons, right? And bosons, the occupational probability of for any particular energy is 1 by e power e minus mu by kt minus 1, right? So you can see that at higher temperatures you have the denominator value to be significantly smaller, so this f of e has a higher value at higher temperatures, whereas at 0, let us say at 0 Kelvin, this goes to infinity and f of e is almost 0. So you have no phonons at 0 Kelvin and starts to slowly or rapidly increase at higher temperatures. So you can clearly see why the number of phonons increases as you increase temperature, and hence the scattering rate increases. So basically this T plays the role of Ni, or number of ionized impurities, in the previous case, right? So with these two dominant scattering mechanisms, the effective mobility is written by the Matheson's rule. I hope you might have seen this before. So anytime you have this totally independent scattering mechanisms, contributing mechanisms, the effective number is actually this 1 by mu I plus 1 by mu p. And if you have equal number of or if you have high number of impurities as well as higher temperature, the actual mobility turns out to be something like m star minus 3 by 2 t power half. So if you are having a heavily doped semiconductor at high temperature, you will have a mobility which increases with temperature. However, if you have very low ionized impurities, then you have a mobility which increases at lower temperature. You can see the inverse relationship. However, if you have a semiconductor with very large doping density at very low temperatures, you will have a mobility which increases with increasing temperature, right? These three things are something that you have to really understand. In a typical semiconductor, we have very low impurities, right? So the impurity doping density is much smaller in comparison to the actual the atomic concentration in the material, right? So you have something of the order of 10 power. So typical doping density is about 10 power 14 to 10 power 18 per centimeter cube, whereas the atomic density is somewhere around 10 power 22 to 10 power 24. So you have several orders higher atomic density, right? So at this point it is instructive to stop and then let us take a look at some examples, right? Something practical measurement of mobilities in various semiconductors. So here we have measured mobility versus impurity concentration for different semiconductors, and here we have mobility versus temperature for silicon. Let us take the against the impurity concentration for three different materials: germanium, silicon, and gallium arsenide. You can see that the mobility of electrons and holes, mu n, mu p, all of them reduce as the impurity concentration increases. Right? We can see this sort of parabolic dispersion which we saw from the expression that we had. It's not precisely parabolic, it is 1 by x, right? So 1 by x kind of 1 by doping density kind of relationship. And it's also instructive to see that the electronic mobility is always higher than the hole mobility in all semiconductors, which is also consequence of the mass. We saw that the hole mass is always higher than the electronic mass in most semiconductors. You can see that that's the reason for the dispersion, right? You see that the holes have a much smaller curve than the conduction band EK, right? That's the reason why the electrons have much smaller mass than the holes. Right? In addition, you can also see that the effect of impurity is much stronger in silicon in comparison to gallium arsenide. Right? While gallium arsenide has a much higher dielectric constant than silicon, you can see that the effect is smaller, and also the mobility in gallium arsenide is much larger, or significantly larger than in silicon. If you see, the electronic mobility reaches about 10,000 per centimeter square for gallium arsenide, whereas it is only about 1,000 oddish for silicon. Right? So with these things, so we see that it is the charge mobility depends strongly on the impurity scattering. Also with respect to temperature, you can see that if the impurity, so basically you have the curves for very different impurity concentrations from 10 power 13 to 17 and stuff, right? At very low impurity concentration, at about 10 power 13, you can see that the mobility, so it is this curve, right? The mobility kind of decreases monotonically with temperature. As you increase temperature, the mobility drops, whereas at impurity concentrations about 10 power 17 and such, you can see that for some temperature ranges you have an increasing mobility, and then it reduces because after certain temperature the phonon concentration is so much that you do not have an impurity dominated transport. So in regions where you have impurity dominated transport, you have the mobility which increases with temperature. Right? You can see that it is about T power minus 2 in the case of silicon. So at this stage it is important to say that in typical semiconductors where the impurity concentration is not as significant as the phonon density, so the typical mobility has an increasing trend as you reduce the temperature. For instance, let us say for electrons in germanium, you have a temperature relationship of about T power minus 1.66. For holes in germanium, you have a temperature relationship of minus 2.33. Similar relationship happens for silicon. Electrons and holes of silicon have about T power minus 2, whereas electrons for gallium arsenide has a relation of T power minus 1. Right? So most semiconductors with doping densities in the range of about 14 to 16 oddish have a decreasing an increasing mobility as you reduce the temperature. Right? So with this treatment of mobility, we have had a brief introduction to electronic transport in the form of drift, because we're talking about transport in an applied electric field. Next time we meet, let's talk about electronic transport through diffusion. Thank you.